Braja Janarandhana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Yasodanandana Braja Janarandana Yasodanandana Braja Janarandana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parivadagacharya Astatara Satasi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Nitai Gorpemanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're going to read text 39 and 40 from Canto 5, Chapter 1. About Maharaj Privrata. Tasya hava ete shloka Priyavrata kritam karma ko nu kuryat vineshvaram yonemi nimnair akaroch Chayam gna sapta varidhin Priyavrata kritam karma ko nu kuryat vineshvaram yonemi nimnair akaroch Chayam gna sapta varidhin Priyavrata kritam karma ko nu kuryat vineshvaram lady. Vivratakratam kama. Vivratakratam karma. Vayupunat panekaram. Nimnayara karoch. Jayamna saptavaradin tasya. His. Va. Certainly. Ete. All these. Shlokaha. Verses. Priyavrata. By King Priyavrata. Kritam. Done. Karma, activities. Kaha, who. No, then. Kuryat, can execute. Vina, without. Ishwaram, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yaha, one who. Nemi, of the rim of the wheels of his chariot. Nimnai, by the depressions. Akarot, made. Chayam, darkness. Gna, dissipating. Sapta, 7. Vadadin, oceans. Translation. There are many famous verses regarding Maharaj Priyavrata's activities, such as, quote, no one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead could do what Maharaj Priyavrata has done. Maharaj Priyavrata dissipated the darkness of night. And with the rims of his great chariot, he excavated 7 oceans. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. There are many excellent verses famous all over the world concerning the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. He is so celebrated that his activities are compared to those of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes a sincere servant and devotee of the Lord is also called Bhagavan. Sri Narada is called Bhagavan, and Lord Shiva and Vyasadeva are also sometimes called Bhagavan. This designation, Bhagavan, is sometimes conferred upon a pure devotee by the grace of the Lord, so that he will be very highly esteemed. Maharaj Priyavrata was such a devotee. In text 40. Translation. Quote, this is another one of the shlokas that are famous for glorifying Maharaj Priyavrata's activities. Quote, to stop the quarreling among different peoples, Maharaj Priyavrata marked boundaries at rivers and at the edges of mountains and forests so that no one would trespass upon another's property, unquote. Purport. The example set by Maharaj Priyavrata in marking off different states is still followed. As indicated here, different classes of men are destined to live in different areas, and therefore the boundaries of various tracts of land, which are described here as islands, should be defined by different rivers, forests, and hills. This is also mentioned in relation to Maharaj Prithu. who was born from the dead body of his father by the manipulation of great sages. Maharaj Prithu's father was very sinful, and therefore a black man called Nishada was first born from his dead body. The Nishada race was given a place in the forest because by nature they are thieves and rogues. As animals are given places in various forests and hills, men who are like animals are also destined to live there. One cannot be promoted to civilized life unless one comes to Krishna consciousness. For by nature one is destined to live in a particular situation according to one's karma and association with the modes of nature. If men want to live in harmony and peace, they must take to Krishna consciousness, for they cannot achieve the highest standard while absorbed in the bodily concept of life. Maharaj Priyavrata divided the surface of the globe into different islands so that each class of men would live peacefully and not clash with the others. The modern idea of nationhood has gradually developed from the divisions made by Maharaj Priyavrata. So this section of the Bhagavatam is describing the activities of the firstborn son of Swayambhuva Manu. Previously principally Devahuti, but also other daughters of Swayambhuva Manu. Their lives have been described. And Uttanapada, another son of Swayambhuva Manu, his life and his son. So now this section is Priyavrata. And it's just interesting to note, although he's honored in these slokas that Shukadeva Goswami is presenting, or Vyasadeva is writing, in such a manner that he's as glorious as the personality of Godhead, or specifically the verse is saying that no one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead can do what he has done. So the details are absent, as glorious as is being presented here. It's described by Jiva Goswami, I forget the number of verses, but as our Srimad Bhagavatam here in this realm is 18,000 verses, there's a Srimad Bhagavatam in the heavenly realm that's some gigantic number, I can't remember, of verses. And maybe in that section the description is there of what Priyavrata's activities were. But here it's just mentioning he dissipated the darkness of the night. Doesn't say how he did it, just that's like effulgent like the sun. And with the rims of his great chariot he excavated 7 great oceans. The 7 oceans. No description. I don't know any detail because it's not presented, but not to say there wasn't water or there wasn't bodies of water before he was the king, but specifically that was the service that he did. That's all we hear. And he, in a very creative way, just drove his chariot around all over the place. Made depressions. Must have been a big chariot because the ocean is pretty deep. And with the rims, nemi, as in naimi, of the nemi, So it's the Naimisharanya is the hub of the universe, or where the universe spins. The axis of the universe is through Naimisharanya. So anyway, with the rims he made depressions. Nimnayar. And the only comment Prabhupada makes, doesn't comment about what he did and how he did it, he just comments that he's spoken of, not specifically in the language of he is Bhagavan, but Ishvaram. Ko nu kuryat vineshwaram. Vina Ishvaram, without being like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ishvara. I remember very clearly hearing Prabhupada say with strong emphasis that Bhagavan is reserved for the personality of Godhead. It's not, one should not address another as Bhagavan, meaning a common, like his expression that a mother that has a son who's blind, out of affection she may call her son Padmalochan, lotus-eyed, although he's blind, because of her affection. And because of delusion, some persons may call someone God or Bhagavan. There's one infamous Bhagavan that was floating around for a while until he got put in jail. And so Prabhupada spoke, I remember very clearly because it was very strongly stated, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be given that address. But here also in the first canto where Narad is similarly addressed Bhagavan, because of his intimate connection with the personality of Godhead. Narad is being described by Vyas that you're practically the super soul, because your relationship with the personality of Godhead is so intimate. As he is omniscient, your relationship with him is so intimate that you're practically omniscient. But of course he's not Bhagavan, he's not omniscient. But Narada was pretty good about knowing what's going on all over the place, like Super Soul knows what's going on all over the place. And he would not only know what's going on, but he would zoom, show up and then say the right thing, do the right thing, and make people pure devotees. Bhagavan, an empowered, especially empowered person. So that's not, anyway, it's like Shaktivesh kind of a personality, but here it's not. Narada certainly is a Shaktivesh. Got one. Narada is a Shaktivesh avatar. Priyavrata is, let's say, in the caliber, like Narada, or also mentioned as Prithu, another Shaktivesh avatar. So we should understand, Prabhupada wants us to understand through this indication of the purport. It doesn't say Bhagavan in the verse, but he is like, no one but the personality of Godhead can do what he did, so that means he's specially empowered. And then Bhu samsthanam kritam yena. Bhu samsthanam kritam yena. This Bhu Mandala, the earth planet, the earthly region, had a situation, Sangsthanam, and that was, even before the Kali Yuga began, people were poaching or quarreling or, us and them issues. So, as king, he made demarcations. He marked boundaries. Doesn't say how he marked. Maybe he uses the rims of his chariot again. But he marked boundaries, and by natural arrangements, rivers, mountains, forest lines. So there's a field, and then there's a forest, and so there's a demarcation, natural demarcation. The purpose of which was to prevent people from unnecessarily quarreling. Okay, you have this place to live peacefully. But this is, of course, when people would live under the codes of Dharma. And fast forward into Kali Yuga, people don't even know what Dharma is, what to speak of following. And therefore, the language that Prabhupada is using here is the modern idea of nationhood has gradually developed from the divisions made by Maharaj Priyavrata. And those that have heard Srila Prabhupada speaking about nationalism know how much he was not fond of nationalism. He's very seriously criticized nationalism in a variety of ways, one of them being, you'll never find this mentioned in the Vedas. Another being, if people can understand Isavasyam, everything belongs to God, then the necessities from around the world would be supplied because somebody has, and he was speaking with some religious people of some kind, I assume maybe Catholic because it was France, and he asked them pointedly, is it true? I heard the report that there was a lot of supply of something, grain or something, or milk. And so they decided, we'll just slaughter a bunch of cows because we have too much milk. Is it true that happened? And, they didn't give a clear, yes, that happened, it was disgusting. They waffled, but they said, yes, it happened, and some waffling. I can't remember the reply. And then Prabhupada said, why do they seeing nationalism? There are parts of the world, you're speaking about helping the poor and all of that thing. So why not see that the milk goes to, rather than kill the cows? What kind of leadership is this? And you're the priest, why don't you speak about it? You're the Brahmins. Speak to the Kshatriyas, give guidance to the Kshatriyas. And they waffled. And so, whether the Kshatriyas will follow or not follow is another thing, but clear speaking, if the Brahmins don't speak, who's going to speak? The proper kinds of guidance. So we can take it, at least I take it, that there was the Isavasya spirit. At the same time, there was some natural friction, like the natural friction that's described in the first canto Bhagavatam of bamboos in a bamboo forest, because bamboos grow in such a way they're very close to one another, proximate, and so when the wind blows, one bamboo may bend, and a strong wind it may bend quickly and make a loud sound, crashing against another bamboo. So similarly, when the population of the planet becomes such that people become proximate, then natural friction can arise. And so demarcation. This is your area of habitation. That's your area of habitation. And the reference is even during the time of Priyavrata. Now, Prithu Maharaj he gave Nishada a place to stay. It happened even at the very beginning of creation, where Lord Shiva was born, and Lord Shiva expanded into 11 Rudras, and 11 Rudras started tearing up the place, destroying the universe. And so Brahma said, not now. You can destroy the universe later. Your service comes later. So he gave them a place to stay. Kala something poor. Kala Jyoti something poor. And that's a place at the bottom of the universe. So they're, just do penance. Sit and meditate. Be peaceful. Your time will come. Do it later. And they do. But so they were given a place to stay. So that method of, it's as old as the universe, that persons of certain quality or character or nature, they have a place to stay. The system, when Prabhupada was describing how he wanted the layout of Mayapur to go, of course, putting it into effect is quite a challenge. The master plan team of Sridham Mayapur has a major challenge. But he described how Vedic cities would be set up. As you can see when you go to Sri Rangam, there's an area where the Brahmanas live. It's where the Brahmanas live. There's actually several areas, and it's everyone that's there is Brahmanas. And then there's a place where the administrators live, and there are places like that, places where the Vaishyas live, and places where the Shudras live. So it's not haughty or snobbish. It's a natural arrangement, so people of like disposition can be with people of like disposition. That was there in Navadvip, the Brahminical community. Of course, a lot of Navadvip was Brahminical, but the Brahminical community lived in a proximate region. At least the Vaishnavas largely lived in a similar area in Navadvip. So it's a natural arrangement for fulfilling the purpose of Isavasya spirit. Now, the degrading part is identification on the platform of the body. And Prabhupada expresses it this way in the purport. As long as one identifies on the platform of the body, there's no question of harmony and peace. Ishavasya spirit just goes out the window. And it becomes party spirit in terms of thinking in terms of the body. And I've got this body type, and so, that one's got that body type, and so we have an issue. It doesn't mean, it's this delicate thing. It doesn't mean we don't recognize differences. We recognize differences, and we honor differences, and allow persons with certain propensities to gather together and do their propensity. Kind of this is just a thought on this point is, as we've been going down the path the last 5-6 years in our GBC of strategic planning. So there are different ideas, to build a better future something. So like for example, there's Bhakti Marg Swami is really keen on theater and other forms of cultural presentation. There are other facets to his character, but he really likes that. So there are others that also like that, and so they've formed a group. They have a little acronym. They got a web page, and people all over the world that do cultural presentations. Like that's a big umbrella, cultural presentations. But persons like architecture, some persons like dance, some persons like drama, some persons like other forms of artistic presentation to showcase Krishna consciousness. So they have a sangha. Devotee care. Some devotees really, really like devotee care. Some persons, I've mentioned this here, but Gauranga Prabhu from Chaupati, nice, wonderful brahmachari, but he also likes systems. And he made a fantastic presentation, a 2-part, really well-attended presentation at our International Leadership Sangha on systems, Because, you do something, you do something, you do something, you keep doing something, and you develop a system. And then so if you don't have a system, you can just look at existing systems that are effective, and it helps to do things. And then it's not person-specific, it's someone else can leave that post and someone else can fill the post, because then there's a system to follow. Nice. Very nice. So some persons have that propensity, and then, then other propensities, without elaborating. And it's not disharmony, or I'm better than you, or you're better than me, and competition and envy. It's harmony. But like the different parts of the body. So that's the Vedic system of varnashram, and it became degraded when it became snobbish. We're better than you, and etc. And not rather than the part serving the whole, it's a part saying I'm better than you, and then having clashes, etc. That's comes from bodily identification, and so it's not recognizing differences that's the problem, and we're just supposed to put differences into a blender, turn it on high speed, and we have no differences. That's not real. That's what Prabhupada said to Professor Katowski. You say classless society, but that's not what I see. I see, going from my morning walk, I see a lady sweeping the street, and down the street comes a big limousine with someone heading for the Kremlin. That's there's differences. But it's not a fault, it's God's creation. Chaturvarna maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagasha. Krishna created it. So let's recognize it. Like there are different parts of the body. Let's recognize the different parts of the body. There's the head department, arms department, etc. And they're meant to cooperate together in harmony. And it's not like I'm an arm or I'm a head. And it's a service. It's an inclination for activity by past involvement with nature and so on, and here we are. So by Krishna's arrangement, we have a different position. That's nice. Let's honor the different positions, and because the central goal is isavashyam, serving the Supreme. And then it's very nice. And persons that have this disposition, they do things together, natural. Persons that have that disposition, they do things together, that's natural. And let us honor the different dispositions, provided the central point is there, the satisfaction of the Supreme. So Priyavrata was like that. He made these divisions not nationalism, not, you've got this state, and you just peacefully rule over there and don't poach on the other person's state. You have your place to stay, and live a isavasya spirited life, and be happy. But nationalism, because of bodily consciousness, it naturally leads to conflict, war, fighting over stupid things, fighting over who's going to control this place, who's going to control that place. And it's been going on since beginning. Issues on that, and especially strong bodily identification. So that's the very first message of Bhagavad Gita. Cut this bodily identification knot. And then you can contemplate on what your duty is. How to think higher if you let go of the bodily conception. And conversely, hold on to the bodily conception, and it's ball and chain. You're not going to get very far. Walking or running, you're not going to get very far. Not in spiritual life. So I'll stop there and see if there's any discussion. Yes. Yes.
As you just concluded, the first step is to give up the bodily identification, and then the first step you just concluded with is that we...
That's the teaching. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
Bhagavad Gita, as you were saying. And then we can contemplate what's our proper duty. So, but the tendency is, especially when we hear about things like we heard about Varnashram not too long ago and all of that, is to look for the thing that we like primarily as like that's the thing that's really going to make me happy in my so-called spiritual life. So what's the protecting factor? Is it just a relationship first primarily with a spiritual authority that keeps us in line?
That's a good one.
Okay.
Submission is another. And desiring purity is another. Someone else.
Extrapolating here a little, what you were discussing like on a broader scale, I'm thinking on more like a micro scale, like a community of devotees, for example.
Sure.
And we accept the Ishavashram principle. At the same time, there are many differences. And the tendency in a community is somehow try to, of course, reconcile the differences in order to serve Krishna.
Respect the differences.
Respect the differences. But sometimes it is perceived that some of the differences may be irreconcilable in terms of proximity. Like there should be respect from a distance, but in terms of coming near to another individual, that may not be always possible. But then we're living in like a temple, for example.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to reconcile that situation to serve together. So I was...
higher consciousness, that's how. And otherwise it's strife. Higher consciousness. So before giving the okay for someone to live, it's one thing, living outside, coming, and then going back. But someone's going to live, there has to be at least a commitment to higher consciousness. And so some evaluation period is required where they can, such a person can have a sufficient capacity, spiritual capacity, not just be tolerant. That tolerant is nice too, but spiritual capacity to see beyond the differences and respect differences. There's a limit, but that's what administration needs to be looking at is, where's the limit and who's qualified. Imagine what it was like when there was no sense of that. It was a free-for-all. In the beginning of the stage of the Hare Krishna movement, people just were pouring in like flood time or something. And but the reconciling factor was the mission. We just, it wasn't so much respect for the differences. We were just oblivious, and the mission was up there, and we just did the mission. Right, Chaitendriya? You have a pretty good memory. You could probably give us like the number of incidents of, clashes because of differences.
I was thinking of the isms used in the Ishopanishad, and then Prabhupada says it gives way to euphemistic language. So they use the word nationalism for a softer word for the word militarism. I don't know if did you remember how he equated that?
No, militarism. Yeah. No, I don't.
That's just a soft nationalism, just a softer word for militarism, and then commercialism or capitalism is consumerism and exploited.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know exactly what verse it is. Somebody probably remembers that, but he talks about the certain isms, and Krishna consciousness pushes these isms away.
Yeah.
Brings it to the the truth of the matter.
Jai Jagannath wants to add to this.
Along the same lines, I'm supposed to be the Bhakta leader, and that's not clearly defined. But
you like it that way?
Well, I have some ideas actually that, like Bhakta Drew is the temple commander, or Daita Prabhu, Daita Prabhu. Sorry, I'm getting used to that. Is the temple commander, and our duties are in some ways very similar, but Daita Prabhu's service is more like seeing to the care of many of the necessary functional things in the temple. And I'm supposed to be like a spiritual inspiration and like that, like more maybe like an inner life of devotees.
Okay.
So anyway, that's my understanding right now, what a Bhakti leader is here in Chicago. So then one problem that I sometimes see is different devotees may perceive a particular relationship which they either want to be a part of or they feel envious of. And somehow that they're not able to come together themselves, and they feel envious of another type of relationship or friendship. And then
You're speaking of the bhaktas in the bhakta program,
Yeah.
looking at other relationships towards which they feel some envy.
Yes, envy, or because I either wanting to participate in that and not being able to, or other reasons. And then
Hankering.
coming to me and then wanting me to come up with a solution for that, or that's kind of like a dilemma. I was wondering how I might deal with such an issue in the future. I can give another example, like in Chalpati, when I was there, because there's many devotees.
There's many devotees.
And
And there's some outside those devotees wanted to come in, and some outside those that wanted to come in, to those who are waiting to come in, and there's a lot of devotees.
a lot of devotees. And one thing that I observed there, and devotees shared with me also, is that devotees get like kind of like their cliques now. That's kind of a negative word, but like their groups, birds of the same feather flock together.
But it's to be honest, and that's what it is. It's not just groups; it's groupism.
Groupism. And so sometimes a devotee wants to be a part of the group, but somehow he's not clicking or he's not able to be a part of the group. So he feels envy, or he feels that they're snobbish. We were discussing this snobbish.
Yeah.
So then that creates animosity within the atmosphere. So as a bhakta leader, how is one to deal with such a situation?
Well, there's ideal, and then the ideal is continue to, as far as Krishna permits and empowers, and the people want to go there. Go to the Beyond the Bodily Conception of Life platform, and that's the silver bullet. That takes care of the whole thing. However, many people, are very conditioned and not so much ready to go there, and just kind of stuck, and continuing even I get it, and they don't get it, and they just keep moving on the bodily platform. So it's a little bit like what Priyavrata, there's a helping. I can think of two or three things. One of them is helping that devotee feel satisfied within themselves in terms of their service and their relationship with the process of Krishna consciousness, an inner satisfaction, so that there isn't an external hankering for something I don't have. There's an inner satisfaction. So I have my place, and this is my service, and I have satisfaction. That's one. Another is relationships, specifically relationships with, like this example where there's a group that I don't feel that I'm accepted by, and I wish I could be part of that group that I'm not accepted by, is, some relationship with the group or some members of the group, and, can you just, this is the perception, true or not, and can you leave the door open? At least the person feels they can come at the doorstep, and they don't have to be part of the group, but, break down that barrier a little bit. On this, just on relationships, I'm thinking as I'm speaking about one, that not here in the temple, but a situation where that's going on, and I volunteered. I have a relationship with these people. If you let me know, and I won't not going to say this person is feeling left out or being shoved to the side or something. But if you want me to, and so they say, well, thank you. I have another approach I want to work on, and just like basically elevate consciousness. And emphasis upon, we're all serving the same cause. So that's kind of elevation of consciousness. So it breaks down the groupism and helps elevate things to, we have the same cause. Still it's going to be there. So then it's just, you help to, manage the situation relationship-wise, and mainly your responsibility is the persons who you're giving care to. So that, one of the things that you can say is, when you grow up, don't be like that. Don't be the victim and later become the perpetrator. So get out of the consciousness of groupism. Get into the consciousness of transcendence. And that which is dysfunctional, displace it by a higher consciousness. And let us all, not like, then don't make another us and them scenario. They're bad and we're going to be good, so let's be good. Then we can look down at them and have our group. But just transcendental consciousness. Foster that. Let us learn. Krishna's giving giving us an opportunity to understand what is more pleasing and what is less pleasing. And even when we're going on the path of more pleasing, it's really easy to fall into the pitfall of groupism. Let us not do that. And to not do that, there has to be something deep. And when that's there, then it's inspiring. It's the tide that lifts all boats. Like an example of this, it's not the same, but it applies. At this, I'm pointing to Austin, Texas. At the Austin, Texas Japa retreat, there was a little girl, 9 years old, that chanted 64 rounds, and a whole bunch of, children, youngsters. There were some that were just the frivolous, playful, run around kind, but there was a number of them that were very fixed in japa. And there were 2 adults that said, just seeing how fixed the children were, it inspired me. I can do it too. So, not, as a service, not as a matter of I'm better than you. Let us go above. And so that, you start with yourself, not what they're like, it's just what you're like. Be the example of what you would like others to be. Be that, let's be that. And how do you do that? You help them understand how to do that. You're growing a culture of transcendental life, while you're at the same time, through relationships, your responsibility is not their Krishna consciousness, the others or the group, but you can make them aware. Because of this, someone else is feeling something, and so be like this instead of like this, because we're a community. I mean, it's very similar to what I was doing upstairs with, I did it 3 times. Because there's a lot of householders and not so many brahmacharis. So, let's have this camaraderie where it's respect and respect. I mean, not just respect and no respect. Respect and respect and honor the differences. Recognize, the whole thing. And create that, especially in those that are in a taking responsibility for others' position. Create that consciousness. And then if they have that consciousness, and amongst those who are leaders function more and more on that platform, that's the model for those that are in the various groups or doing different things. Those are some thoughts on that one. Yes? You're doing fine. Keep going. Which relationships? Okay. That's what he's speaking about. Sure. Welcome to the club. I've spent a lot of time with relationships. And it's not just talk. It's work. Yeah. 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 So you're just underscoring the same thing that he's said. Okay. Someone else. Jitendriya.
I was thinking about the little girl chanting the 64 rounds, and
Yeah.
I was thinking, wow, that's really nice. And then I think of the stuff that goes down in the basement there on Sunday. And, you know, breaking furniture, light fixtures, and beating each other with floor mats. Do you think we could initiate some kind of chanting thing down there?
Could you say it again? Is there what? Yeah, there's different places for different persons of different mentalities. Some are in the temple room, and some are running around beating each other up.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I was just thinking back when I was a little kid in the 1950s when we went to the Catholic Church.
You were a little kid, huh? Go ahead.
And they had this one soundproof room. I don't know what kind of denomination you were brought up in.
With padded walls and
the sound system was piped in. The kids could scream and yell all they want, but the congregation wasn't disturbed because it was soundproof. But then the sermon was being piped into the room, and I thought, wow, could that happen in ISKCON someday?
Sure, just give up one of your storage spaces so we can have an extra room to. Whoops.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, I brought it up. Krunanidhi is enthusiastic to volunteer something here. Over here.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Here in purport, Srila Prabhupada mentioned about how the devotees are sometimes they are referred as Bhagavan.
They're sometimes what?
Referred as Bhagavan.
Okay, refer to Bhagavan. Okay.
So
You want to be in that category? No. Okay.
Whereas I was wondering, sometimes we refer to devotees as Prabhu.
Prabhu.
Yeah. So, but sometimes the devotees they address Sar. So that word actually I don't want to.
It's a cultural difference. It means the same thing. It means the same thing. You could say, Hari Bol. You could say, how are you doing, Prabhu? It's just different. It's not a critical issue. It's the spirit, because someone can say Prabhu in a challenging way. What's wrong with you, Prabhu? And then it doesn't mean anything. Right? Anything on the ladies' side? Anyone? No, okay. Okay. Last one.
This is going to sound a little too simplistic, I guess, but it's something I was realizing more last night. I was also discussing it with Nishati.
Your questions begin with a preamble.
Well, I want people to kind of listen, because it's kind of something that's so obvious that it doesn't sound like it needs to be discussed. But something that Judge Aganappa used to talk about a lot. Although there's differences, we're going to be there because we have different interests. Like our movement is the Sankirtan movement, and the process for the age is Sankirtan. So if we don't have like a big, strong focus of that being our uniting practice, I feel like we're just putting out little fires all over the place all the time. And
Well, even when you have Sankirtan, there's going to be fires, but then you have extinguishers.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So like you were saying at the beginning, you're busy, you used the phrase, or, just 10 hours of chanting together every day or whatever, and it's like, there's differences are there, but that's the process that we're given to deal with it, really. So I'm just inspired by that fact. I mean, we try to do our different things because that's what we have to use in Krishna's service. But if we don't focus on that, do we really have hope to be able to hold all this stuff together, without realizing that that's what's actually going to make it work? I'm not saying something to you that you don't know. I'm just expressing my feelings and trying to understand if there's more to it that I can.
I'll take what you just said in a different direction, which is that Prabhupada laid the responsibility with the leaders in nations, in the world, and take it down to the community. Leaders. And leaders need to be leaders. They need to set the example. They need to do what they want the community to do. They need to set the example. And that means including, in their relationships. And my goodness, we've been making a great deal of emphasis on that. And to have the relationships, a lot of emphasis on what makes a relationship. And then not just talk about it, but do it. And then you can grow, at least in this dark age of Kali, you can grow something that resembles the spiritual world. And then gradually the spiritual world. That's our challenge. And then it's a big challenge, so be a hero and go and fight. But fight against Maya by Krishna consciousness. That's our Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's fight. By the Sankirtan. That's Sango Pangastra Parshadam. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Oh, sorry.